Welcome to the Christina Crooks Show, where you not only get to know the many versions of moi, but also the rich tapestry of humanity. I invite you to bring your full curiosity and listen as we journey through people's stories and expertise. I hope you walk away with insights and inspiration and new possibilities bubbling up inside of your soul. The reason it's called the Christina Crooks Show is because here's the thing. I don't always want to do the same thing. I like a variety in my life. I like to explore different rabbit holes and different people and different interests. So together in this podcast, that's exactly what we'll do. Have fun, and we'll see you soon. In this episode with Craig Daigle, this is season 1, episode 6. The title of this one is Keeping Our Promises to Ourselves. And if you guys are seeing me on YouTube, you get to see what my hair looks like when it's been up all day in a clip. And now I look like I just got off the beach or something. So go over to YouTube and see how awesome my hair looks. Anyway, in this episode with Craig Daigle, we talk about our commitment to ourselves and the promises that we are hoping to keep with ourselves. What happens when we keep those promises, the courage that we build, and what happens when we don't. It's a really fun conversation. He tells us this story of this parable of the master, the man, and the guru. He talks about leaving his abusive marriage, talks about divorce and the challenges of that, the challenges of losing 130 pounds, that transformation and what it did for him, and how much he learned about communication through that journey. It's been 7 years for Craig, and he went from this abusive marriage and being dangerously overweight to almost dying on the bathroom floor and recognizing something major needed to shift. And he started listening to the whispers. We have a really fun conversation, and I love being in conversation with Craig. Everyone I get to be in conversation with is here because I really enjoy their company. These are conversations I would have one-on-one with people for years. And now it's a podcast. So you get to be here with us and enjoy it. So please do let us know what you think, what you'd like to learn more about. Reach out to the guest if they're someone that is open to being reached out to, or buy their books, support their work. And if there's a way that I can support you, that I've resonated with you in some sort of way, reach out. I am a coach, I run a business, and I help people to transform their lives and to transmute energy that they're working through. With that said, I hope you enjoy the episode and have a great time. Today, we are here with Craig Daigle. On August 11th, 2015, Craig's life completely changed. That day, he became a single dad of 2 young boys, was rumbling with divorce, and a victim of domestic violence. He was nearly 500 pounds and facing extreme health challenges. Mentally, physically, and spiritually, he was in crisis. Since that day, he has lost 130 pounds, become a public speaker to help others overcome their adversities, married the woman of his dreams, and is a father of 4 children. He also coaches individuals in their weight loss journeys by addressing the whole person, mind, body, and soul. I'm so glad you're here, Craig.
I'm happy to be here, Christina. My pleasure.
We met about a year and a half ago on Clubhouse, and those of you that are listening will find that many people on here I have met through Clubhouse. And we had many laughs, we had tears, we journeyed with each other through so many things because we would have these really long rooms, 8 to 10 hours. But what I really always appreciated about you, Craig, was your presence and your ability to go with the flow of the space. And you were always really, it's not even so much teamwork as it was really in the community.
Mm.
And you would jump in if there was something that we were creating that was funny, like the silky chicken.
A silky chicken.
Those are good times, good times. But you also have a really rich story of going through these really challenging things and have brought you to this place that you're at in your life where your life rocks. And we've talked
Mm.
about this personally. So tell us a little bit about your journey from 2015 up until now.
Yeah. So like as you shared, I was a victim of domestic violence, and I use that term loosely because I'm not a survivor of it. I was somebody who went through it. And I'm a firm believer that we are a victim once, and after that, we're a volunteer. And I volunteered to be in that relationship for about 8 years. And I often told myself it was, for our kids, for all these different reasons. And at the end of the day, we're all better off now. And as hard as it seemed to get out of that situation, and as daunting of a task, because we're so concerned with the what if and how, that we don't focus on just the doing, right? So in 2015, August 11th, 2015, that was our final domestic. It was in front of our children. And again, me being a 6 foot man and very heavy set at the time, I was immediately the person that was the instigator. Okay. And our children, thank God our children were there and witnessed it. I don't wish that on any child, but if it wasn't for the kids, I literally would have been arrested and put in handcuffs, because they got the story first from my ex-wife outside of our apartment. By the time they made it inside the apartment and had me detained, our children basically told them, our dad didn't do any of what you're saying. Our dad did XYZ. Our dad did this. And, it was a long, drawn out night that night. And I found myself a single father of three at the time. It was my stepdaughter and my two sons. It wasn't until November when my stepdaughter of 8 years was kind of removed from our life abruptly through a guardianship case. She went and was signed over to her maternal grandparents. And it was kind of like in that moment where I was starting to head towards rock bottom, Christina, where it was like I could feel it. Like I could feel my world crashing around me. There was like this overwhelming feeling of despair of I'll never come back from this. Everything was overwhelming. I wanted to give up. There were times I don't think that I would have ever actually followed through with suicide, but there were times that I thought my life would be better and everybody's would be better without me. Those dark feelings. And I remember reaching out to my social media because I knew that I needed to do something. I needed an outlet. Uh, I was in the process of being evicted out of my apartment. I had no money. My car was about to be repossessed. Didn't know how I was going to keep the lights on. And I remember the post. I said, does anybody have an at home workout that I could do, like a DVD or something, just to kind of help take my mind off of things, but also maybe help me get healthy? And a woman that I happened to work with at a hospital at the time, I worked in engineering. She was a respiratory therapist. She said, I have this DVD. I bought it. It's unopened. You can borrow it. I brought it home. I set it on the kitchen table, never opened it. It was there for about a week. And I remember telling myself at that point, I mean, we're in November and I'm already looking at January. I'm like, January 1st. I'm already giving myself that 2 month window of continuing to do the things that didn't work, right, Christina?
Yeah.
And
And I want to pause you just briefly because
yeah,
you said it sat there for a week and I was reflecting instantly on, but it was only a week. This thing here that will probably help you. I had Codependent No More by Melody Beattie sit on my shelf for 7 years. Because the minute I would open it, I would know, nope, too real. I wasn't ready. And when I finally was ready, I went, oh, there's this other side to codependency. It's not just the victim, it's also the hero. And that's where I
Absolutely.
stood, was hero. So when a lot of times when I just want our listener to really hear this moment, because a lot of times the thing we're scared of the most is the very thing we need.
100%. 100%. And that was exactly what I did too. I had tried everything up until that point that you've seen on Dr. Oz, fat burners, Garcinia Cambogia, ketones, raspberry ketones, South Beach diet, Atkins diet. I'd done it all. And the thing that I continued to do was actually lie to myself because I said that I wanted to change. But the truth was, I was willing to try anything that promised quick results without me actually having to do the hard work. And that was the lie that I had to come to realization of. And it took years to figure out that that's what it was. But when I was in the moment, that was what it was. I was afraid to actually do the work. So I was putting it out till January already at that time. And then December 1st at 4 a.m. on December 1st, 2015, I woke up in my CPAP. I had severe sleep apnea. At the time, I was just over 400 pounds. Um, and I couldn't breathe because I also suffered from acid reflux. So when I slept, it would creep up my esophagus and it would block my airway. On top of not having an open airway because of sleep apnea, I had to battle acid reflux too. And I remember waking up that morning and fighting to breathe and tearing the CPAP machine off my face. I tore the actual machine off the nightstand. I got up, I fumbled myself out of bed. I went to the bathroom and I remember looking in the mirror and I was already purple at that point and I couldn't breathe and I'm panicking. I knelt on the floor. I opened the toilet. I was trying to clear my esophagus. I'm just dry heaving in front of a toilet at this point. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, I need to do something. What can I do? And all I could think of doing was praying. And I kept praying. I'm like, don't let me die. Don't don't let me die in my bathroom. Please don't let me die here in my bathroom. Don't let my kids wake up and find their dad dead in the bathroom. And I remember pulling myself up on the sink, opening the medicine cabinet and eating an entire sleeve of antacids. And I can't breathe and I'm putting things in my mouth. It makes zero sense whatsoever. And I started drinking from the faucet. And I'll never forget, I took the deepest breath I've ever taken in my life and my lungs filled with air. And I remember just this relief coming over my entire body and this calm that, like, okay, everything's going to be all right. You're going to make it. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said to myself out loud, we need to do something about this. And this was just this astronomical mountain that I had. It was my health, it was my finances, it was just everything all at once. I just wrapped it into this. And it didn't come to my attention at the time, but I learned later, and I was sharing with you earlier this parable of the master, the guru, and the man. And it's the story of a guru who has all this wisdom.
Listen
And
up,
this
you
man,
guys. Listen
this
up.
man, he wants the wisdom, right? He wants to be rich. He wants all of the things. And he asks the guru to please teach me everything that you know. And the guru says, I promise to teach you everything that you need to know to obtain everything that you want in life. Meet me tomorrow at the beach. And the man's like, okay, like, what am I going to learn at the beach? Fine, I'll meet you there tomorrow. First thing in the morning, they both meet at the beach. The guru's standing there silent. And the man says, okay, I'm ready. Teach me everything I need to know to be successful. And the guru says, okay, let's walk out into the water and I'll teach you. And they get out to the water. They're about waist deep. And the man says, look, like, I'm not here for a swimming lesson. I don't want to go fishing. Why are we at the beach? You promised to teach me everything I needed to know to be successful. And the guru says, I will. Let's go out a little further. Let's go out to our shoulders. And then I promise to teach you out there. And they walk out and the man goes, all right, he's getting frustrated with the guru. He's like, what am I going to learn being here. And the guru grabs his head, pushes him underwater, and he holds him there. The man is fighting for his life. He's kicking, he's screaming underwater. There's bubbles everywhere. Finally, the guru lets him up out of the water, and the man says, "What was that?" And he says, "Look, the day that you fight as hard as you just fought to breathe, to be successful, to learn, to go after what it is that you want, that's the day that you'll obtain it. Until that day comes, you won't."
Yes.
And it was in that moment, like I fought to breathe that day. I fought to breathe. And I knew that I needed to do something. So I walked out and I grabbed that DVD off the table that morning. It was like a week went by, even though I was planning for New Year's. I decided that was the first year that I wasn't going to make a promise to myself that I was going to break. That's what a New Year's resolution is. Every year for my life, it was a promise that I made to myself that I broke. I didn't respect myself enough to keep that promise every single year that I broke it. And I said, you know what, this year, no resolution. I'm just going to do it now. December 1st was my first ever cardio workout. I thought I was going to die for the second time that morning. I was clutching my chest. I couldn't keep up with the lady in the video that just had a baby. I was like, this is ridiculous. But I
And
finished it. And
at that time, you were almost 500 pounds, right?
yeah, I was over 400 pounds. I don't know my exact weight at that time because I didn't have a scale. I stayed away from scales.
Got it.
So I was anywhere between 400 and 500 pounds. And I couldn't do what they were doing, Christina. All I had in my head was this: stay moving until this thing is done, and then we'll be finished. So there were times where like they were doing burpees and I jogged in place. And I literally just kept telling myself, just stay moving. Just stay moving. It's only 25 minutes. Just stay moving. And when I finished that 25 minutes, I thought to myself, like, I had all of these like monumental epiphanies in my head out loud. I literally was like the craziest person in the room. I was talking to myself because it was cheaper than therapy at that point. Like I was just getting through it, right? And I said to myself after the workout, and I'll never forget, I said, that 25 minutes was the hardest 25 minutes of my life. And I stopped and I was like, no, you know what? That was only hard for 25 minutes. Being overweight, being depressed, being anxious, being miserable, being all of the other things that I was hard 24 hours a day. If it was 25 minutes, cool. I'm choosing the 25 minutes every day of the week. If that brings me 1% closer to being a better person tomorrow than I am today, game on. I will continue to do that. That was my mindset at that point. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize that I had that switch flipped that morning. And literally, I just continued to do it every single day.
I think what's especially poignant in that part of your story is that you were okay with baby steps. It didn't have to be perfect. And I think so often when we embark on a new thing, I know I can experience that. I want to get to the part that is the finished product or the finished part. Like I want to be able to do it from the way that I'm being taught and the way that I'm learning. But we forget that it's a journey.
Well, we're humans and we live in a day and age where instant gratification is granted. If you want to buy something, you order it on Amazon, it's dropped off at your door. You want food, you Uber Eats it, it's brought to your door. And the realization that we expect that same treatment in other things in our life, subconsciously, it's not even like a conscious thing that we do. It's just because everything is so accessible. And you're right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We can't just run as fast as we can and get it done and meet that goal, you know?
Yeah. And especially when it comes to body stuff, physical things, we are always committed to something.
Yeah, our excuses or our change, one or the other. You
We're
can't
always
be
committed to
committed to both.
something. And for me, when it comes to my own weight loss and my own health in my body, I am always looking at, okay, what am I committed to in this moment? And oftentimes it comes back to I am committed to my comfort, and my comfort does not want to move right now. or my comfort wants this burger, or my comfort
Mm.
wants this ice cream. And when I go, okay, but it, not to say that those are completely gone, because they're not. I'm a human
Right.
being, but I am always looking to have a 1% better day. Not
That's it.
100%, 1. That's it. Just small baby steps, small shifts in my day, small shifts in my habits and my way of being, because those little shifts are what add to major shifts down the road that
Yep.
stick.
If you move 1% forward each day, it's still forward motion. And even just that 1% compounded, like you're talking about over time, those little small things, they come together and become a bigger goal or a bigger success or a bigger achievement. And that's the story of the last almost 7 years of my life has been these little goals and these little monumental steps and you know coming out of it. And I think that it's wonderful that you and I are doing this conversation now, given the gravity of what's going on in the world and, Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, and, I have a lot of my own opinions on there. But the thing is there's a lot of people out there that don't understand that it's not gender specific. Um, Domestic situations, and I won't call it violence because it could be emotional, it can be verbal, and I'm just going to call it a domestic, a general term, because yes, they do get physical, but I, c- the mental and the emotional part of it literally destroys people, especially men. Um, and I speak from experience when I say this because I was brought up to not cry, not do these things. It's not men don't do that. Men, and I'm not saying that that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just the age and generation that I grew up in. So it was almost demoralizing for me. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to talk about it at first until I knew that my purpose was to share my experiences so that other people, especially men, would know that they're not alone.
Yeah, yeah, and for everyone listening, for our audience, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, we talked about this a little bit before we came on because I was really fascinated by your story with domestic and with DV. And s- recently in now this episode will probably have about a 5-6 week lag period before it gets to our listeners, so it may not be as present in the media as it is right now, but we just went through this very long 6-week trial in our culture with Johnny Depp and his ex-wife, and she had all these claims about him as an abuser, which the jury found to be not true. And or at least they found that she not true, and he won his all but one count of defamation.
Mhm.
And in our society and in our culture, it's so biased to think that this can only happen to women. And this was a really interesting case for me to watch both as an ontologist, because I watch for people's beingness and how their behaviors and how they have tells that will give
Mhm.
away their true beingness despite what their words say. It was fascinating from that perspective. And I watch a lot of behavioral analysts and things like that. So, regardless of whether or not you believe this woman's story, if you watch her behavior, it does not make sense.
Right.
And so there's that piece, but my partner went through something similar. The only difference was, Depp had many addictions and my partner never has. And he had gone through this experience with his ex-wife, and he was like, "This is so validating to see happen because it shows it doesn't just go one direction. I experienced this in my
Mhm.
marriage. This happened to me, but we up until recently, we couldn't talk about it. We'd be laughed at, especially
Yep.
by other men and even by other women. it seems ridiculous to think that we could experience domestic violence or domestic abuse. And it's not true. And for our listeners to help you guys follow the bouncing ball, because I know it seems like we jumped from weight loss to this, but it impacts our weight. It impacts our bodies, what
That's why I was where I was, Christina.
emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, all these things affect how we show up and we attract the things that we're willing to accept. So I want to put those dots together for
Mhm.
the people that are listening that this does all weave together. And just like you said, that's why you were where you were.
I emotionally ate. I became a food addict. I was addicted to food. My ex used prescription drugs and alcohol as her coping mechanism. So, I saw a lot of the substance abuse in our household, and I saw how it affected her and affected our marriage, our children's lives, and ultimately where we all are now at this point. But yes, at 100%. I mean, was I overweight when I met her? Yes. Did it get worse? Yeah, a lot worse. And just like you described, like, did I ever fear for my life? I can't say that I truly was physically terrified. My ex-wife was 5 feet tall and 100 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall almost. And at any given point in our relationship, I was at least 250 pounds plus. So was I terrified that she was gonna overpower me and beat me to death? No. Did she physically attack me? Yes, quite often. Am I exempt from partaking and participating in it? No. Did I put hands and do stuff that I regretted? 100%. I should have never pushed her away from me. And it's listening to the trial go on, and I related so much to hearing I removed myself and went to XYZ room to de-escalate it. And you can't. There is no de-escalation when you're in the middle of a domestic situation, especially when it's heated and the person wants to continue. It doesn't end until it has to, until it's climaxed to a point where authorities are involved or you've left. And even if you leave, it's just put on pause
Right.
until it comes back again. So,
And a lot of that is interwoven with addiction too, because
mm,
I grew up in a quite a dysfunctional environment. And just one more thing for the listeners, I may have my family on this podcast because they're now aware that I have one and they want to be on it. So this isn't to badmouth my family, but at the time, my mother was in active addiction and
mm,
most of my growing up. And so things were incredibly dysfunctional, incredibly dysfunctional. And it was the same kind of thing. If she wanted to have a fight with somebody, she was gonna have a fight with somebody,
yep.
and she was gonna follow them, and she was gonna get in their face, and she was gonna do whatever it took to get the reaction she wanted.
Mm,
And she would push it, and I would witness that as a kid, and I think that's why I have such a drive for the other side of that, for healthy relationships and for intentional relationships and conscious relationships
mm,
now, because I know what the other side looks like. And that's why we've become friends too, because we can relate to each other on that level. And I think if you haven't been through it, you can't quite understand what that's like unless you've experienced it firsthand and you're on the other side. And now
right.
let's talk about some of that transition into that other side, because when you do start to see, oh, if I surrender and I trust that things are going to work out and I take the actions I need to take, the inspired action I need to take, I'm consistent, I'm disciplined in myself, and I'm curious and I'm grateful for the things I do have and I'm playful with life and I'm in this constant conversation with life. Oh, you mean I'm in the driver's seat?
Mm.
Wow. So tell me about how you've transitioned to the life you're in now, how different it is and what that experience was like.
So I remain a student. I am still to this day a work in progress. I learn something new and get better each day. I'm better today than I was yesterday. Tomorrow, the goal is to be better than I am today. And, when you don't stop learning, and when you don't, and even I don't mean learning in general, like knowledge, reading books. I mean, learning about yourself. I learn something new about myself all the time. I still fail. We, as human beings, we fail. But having that faith and knowing that, God gave me a purpose. I was given an opportunity to do something so much bigger than who I am by sharing my story and helping other people. One of the biggest things that helped me transition, though, from my own personal journey and hustling my face off and losing the weight and getting to where I was, the hardest thing for me was setting down my pride and my ego. One, because as a stubborn man, I will tell you this, gratitude journaling changed my life. Being grateful for things and having that perspective and putting on that lens of thankfulness has really opened up my eyes to just wonderful things, because how you start your day means so much to you and you have no idea. You could start your day slapping that snooze button 100 times and dreading getting out of bed, or you can swing your feet off the bed, thank God for another day alive, for the legs that you have to get you up out of your bed, for the capability to breathe again, for another day on this earth, because you're not promised tomorrow. Like, there's so many different things that you can do when you get out of bed. And I wake up with such gratitude because there was a moment where I didn't know that I was going to survive. And I don't say that lightly. I literally thought I was going to die that day. When I transitioned, it was this realization. And even though I went through domestic violence, even though I was in it, I take responsibility. I don't take responsibility for the things done to me, but as I've explained to other people and as we talked about, I take ownership in the fact that I teach people how to treat me. I teach people what I'm willing to put up with. I teach people how to respect me. The
Yes.
same thing goes with my ex-wife. I taught her what I was willing to endure. I taught her what I was willing to put up with. And for 8 years, I was willing to put up with those fights and those spats and those emotional breakdowns and the mental abuse. I taught her that it was okay to do that because I would just stand there and take it. And I'm in a different place now where I've learned that one of the biggest pillars of success for us is communication. And if you're able to intentionally communicate with other people, and sometimes it's as simple as making sure they understand what you said. And I'm learning that so much being here in the Midwest because I grew up in New England and coming to here, it's a different culture. So a lot of the words and the things that I say from growing up in New England don't translate here in the Midwest. So a lot of times I get boisterous, I get loud, I talk fast. People think I'm mad or I'm angry, and I'm not. I'm just talking. And I'm from New England. And here it's a much slower pace. People pause when they talk, they take breaks, they communicate effectively. And I've been able to adapt. I don't win every day. Trust me, I still get this wrong from time to time, but I learned to effectively communicate with people from public speaking and sharing my story. The largest stage I spoke at, I spoke in front of 30,000 people in attendance and live in 4 countries. Um, to be able to stop and to tell a story was a blessing and a gift that was given to me to effectively share and communicate properly. But I could ruin that by not taking my time and communicating properly. And I think that communication is one of the biggest pillars of success for us as human beings, because if you communicate to another person what you feel, what you're going through, what you've endured, what your experience is, we can learn so much from each other. And it doesn't matter, you know, what you vote, how you feel about this opinion, how you feel about this thing. You can come together and understand each other better when it's communicated properly. And I think that we as a society have a problem with too many people fighting to be understood than taking the time to understand each other.
That's a
And
really good point. And, one of my, when you were saying that, one of my favorite books that I think should be required human reading, there's several of them, but one of them that I've recently added to that Rolodex is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And in that, it really helps broaden your awareness of what that looks like. And
mm,
one of the pivotal pieces in the book to me was observations versus evaluations. And
mm,
so often as human beings, we're quick to judge and assess. We're
mhm.
wired for it because we're looking for what's safe and what's the danger zone. Danger zone totally reminds me of I can't even think of the name of the show, but long time ago. Anyway, now I just have that cartoon playing in my head. But when that's the way we're operating through life of constantly judging and assessing and critiquing for safety versus danger, we're coming from survival mode. And but it's
Yes.
wired into us. So we have to actively and intentionally go within to go, okay, how am I responding to this? Especially when you're quote unquote triggered. And I use that word very delicately because I think a trigger is an opportunity. It's such a beautiful opportunity to go within and go, why am I taking it this way?
Yep.
Why am I
Why did I feel that way? Yeah.
right? It's most likely because a boundary was crossed for you, or a boundary had been crossed in that scenario before that you had never addressed. And a lot of times it's relating to somebody else. You're not even seeing the person in front of you anymore. It's not the person in front of you right now that's triggering you. It's the one it reminds you of from 20 years ago,
Yep.
or 10, or 40, or 60. We hold on to these things from early childhood that continue to impact us. And it was Carl Jung that said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it's something like we will continue to do it and call it fate.
Mhm.
And that is so true. And so what I hear and what you're sharing is an expanded awareness of who you are and how you operate. And I would guess you probably gain a lot of that from working with people in their weight loss journeys, right?
I do. And, over the last 7 years of working with people, a lot of people that work with me have very similar stories because your vibe attracts your tribe. And, in those conversations, even though we have similar stories, I get to hear other stories. And,
And
you know,
other perspectives.
exactly. And there's this saying that, experience is best learned secondhand. If I watch you burn your hand on the stove, I don't need to touch it to know that you got hurt. Um, so
Right.
I try to learn from other people's experiences to make my experiences better. And it's that victim mentality that a lot of people hold on to because it's become who they are, and they don't know how to live their life without letting go of that victimization that they
It's
have because it's who they are.
it's
It,
become a way of being.
exactly. And often I've learned that it's a label that was put on them by somebody else. It's not even actually something. I mean, we do talk down to ourselves. We're our own worst critics, but it's something that an ex did, or a teacher told them, or their parents said to them. And it's a label that is stuck with them their whole life where they just continue to victimize themselves. And, you know, it's funny because I often hear people, um, when I'm talking to somebody or I'm coaching a client and I say something that gets them in the feels, like we were talking about, and they get angry. And I'm like, what part of what I said made you angry? And they're like, oh, well, you're saying this. And it's like, no, you need to ask yourself, why did I feel that way about what he said? Because it had nothing to do with you, and people often personalize these things because they victimize themselves. And I always try and help clients learn how to let go of those things. So when you shared in the beginning that I help people overcome their adversities by no longer becoming a victim of their circumstance, by letting go and releasing some of those things that we carry. And the way that I describe it to people is it's like baggage, right? We all have that baggage. There was an event that I spoke at where I asked everybody in the audience to pick up their chair and hold it. And everybody did because the guy speaking told us to, right? And everybody's standing there, they're holding their chair. And minutes went by, and I just continued sharing what I was sharing. And a few people set it down because it got heavy, right? Not because I told them to, but because they knew that they could. But other people continued to hold on. And I just kind of looked at the audience and I said, how long will you hold on to your chair if I don't tell you that you can set it down? And a couple of them kind of looked at me and they're like, okay. And they set their chairs down. And I said, give yourself permission, give yourself permission to set down those things that no longer serve you, those things that happen to you that you can't change, that are gone and done and over with, and stop carrying them through your life because it becomes heavy. There's no need. It doesn't mean you won't think about it or you won't grieve on it or it won't affect you again. It just means right now you don't need to carry it all the time. Set it
And
down.
yes.
Just set it
And
down.
when you're saying that, I'm curious if you agree with this statement because I say this all over the place and I say it to clients often. How we do one thing is how
That's
we do
how we
everything.
do everything.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. Because it's true. It shows up in how you unload the dishwasher. It shows up in how you do your laundry. It shows up in how you interact with your neighbor. It shows up everywhere. And when you were sharing that example, my version of that, it's quick story. I was at a Wisdom 2.0 conference maybe 4 years ago. There was this breakout that I was a part of, and they were doing somatic coaching. And so they were doing some exercises in there. And it's a company that focuses on somatic coaching. And they were doing a lot of martial arts type things also, like physical exercises. And they had this one where we were supposed to push against kind of an imaginary force, but also not so imaginary, so that you could see how you interacted with a force pushing against you. And then we would switch roles. So the way it was set up is there was two people. One person would push against the other, and the one being pushed against would push against those hands on their chest. So I was paired up with this man, and he had his hands on my chest, and he was pushing me, and I was supposed to push towards. And I guess we had been in such a battle that one of the facilitators came over and touched my wrist and looked at both of us, made eye contact, and said, "It's not a fight. Just feel the resistance." And I had this kind of what you described in the bathroom that morning, this overwhelming sense of warmth and held, but also strong emotion, like just so much all at once. And I heard that part in myself and I went, "Not right now. I'm in the middle of a conference. I'll be back. We'll join up later," like to that part of myself. And I remember going back to my hotel room that night and I called my coach immediately and I said, "This thing happened today and I don't know what this is. I feel anxiety in my chest. I feel like I could just crumble into a ball and sob for hours." And he was like, "Okay, let's unpack this." And it wasn't long. It only took maybe 15 minutes for me to get to the tears. And I found that for the majority of my life, I had been fighting to survive and fighting to be heard and fighting against rather than standing for. So instead of feeling that resistance and just standing strong and really getting my footing, every bit of pressure he put on, I would tenfold it. And what the real tears were about was that this guy was attracted to that. And I could feel it. I could feel like the more
Mhm.
I pushed against his hands being there, the more attracted he was. And I had experienced that so much in my life, and I've always found it gross because that's me fighting for survival. And you think it's sexy?
Yep.
Because I'm just trying to live here.
Right.
And that was because of how I grew up. It wasn't even about that guy, but it sent me on a course to really dig into and understand rape that I had experienced before. And then reading my grandmother's biography and recognizing that I had always known this intellectually, but I don't think I had really heard it spiritually or emotionally. I am the granddaughter of rape. My father was the product of that. And I wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for that experience.
Mhm.
So not only is it my own, but it's also some generational trauma. And all that came out with someone being a resistance to me.
Mhm.
And that's when I started to really identify where in my life from that one thing, like there's this energy I have where I was always ready for a fight. I was always armored up and I was like, come at me, bro. Come at
Yep.
me. And and there was this readiness. So I was finding this resistance everywhere. I was finding people that wanted to challenge me because I was always ready. And it started to shift piece by piece by piece by piece in my life. And I can absolutely stand in that space if I choose to, but it's not an automatic space I stand in.
Right.
So
It,
you sharing that exercise reminded me of the same thing, how powerful these physical exercises can be because that stuff lives in our body.
mhm.
And when we're willing to look at it and go within and go, what is this? What is here? What's showing up? What am I noticing? What am I seeing? And how can I play with this so that I can move beyond it so I'm not a puppet to myself?
And that's the hardest part, right, Christina? When we're in it, so hard to pick ourselves up or to lift the weight off of us that we feel so trapped and oppressed that we don't recognize that that's what it is. It's all of these labels, these things that were told to us, the narratives and stories that other people said about it. It's all those things, right?
Right.
They're things,
All the things that are not who we are.
right? And it's so hard when you're in it. And that's where having people like what you do for clients, what I do with clients, and what our colleagues do with clients. It's not that we have all the answers because we don't, and nobody does. It's being able to shed the light, to be that lighthouse for other people
I do have to
that
say my ego was like, I don't know about you. I got a lot of answers.
and that's our pride and our ego, but
Right, right.
it's to be that lighthouse. I always tell people, I'm a lighthouse, not a tugboat. I'll show you where all the rocks are. I'll show you where the shoreline is, but I'm not coming out into the ocean to drag you into the harbor and make you change. I will teach you and show you. I will shed the light on there if I can, but it's up to you to navigate your boat to where it needs to be. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you're seeing us on YouTube, just remember that if you feel like your entire world is on top of you right now, it's temporary and you're not alone. And there are people out there that have overcome it. There are people out there that are experiencing it at the same time you are, and you can get through it. And the harder that you work towards understanding how and why you feel that way, the closer you'll get to repairing and uprooting those things. It's funny. Even just recently, I had this major shift for myself. Um, Over the last 2 years of all of the different things that we've had go on through society where you know, depending on how you felt about this or that, you're in this turmoil, right? And I got to this point where I didn't respect myself again, and I recognized it. And I tell people, I'm like, the reason why I'm not where I want to be is because I don't respect myself enough to do it. If my boss asks me to come in on Saturday at 7 a.m., I'll be there. If my friend asks me to come over Friday afternoon to help them move a couch and I tell them I'll be there, I'll be there. But why is it when I tell myself that I'm going to write a book, start a podcast, start my diet or meal plan? I don't like diet, meal plan, or start a fitness program. Why is it that I don't respect myself enough to follow through with what I told myself I would do, but I do it for everybody else? And it's because I'm a perpetual people pleaser at heart and I'm a work in progress. And it's taking those moments to, again, set that pride and ego aside and to recognize it. And it's not easy. I'm not a master at it. And even I need to learn to respect myself again every now and then. But if you're feeling like your entire world is crumbling around you, keep going. You are going to get
Find your
through it.
people, right? Like
Yes.
find your, because
Support.
even when you are in a place where you are supporting other people and you're a leader and you're speaking on stages, all these things, you still need your own support. You need your own places to go refill your cup and refill your well. That never stops.
Nope.
Never. And I'm with you, Craig, that I recently went through one of my own where I was going, okay, certain things in my business are not working the way that I want them to go. And I went, what do I need to do? And I just, for weeks, I just got quiet and listened and go, what's next? What's next? And sometimes the things didn't make sense. One of them in the last 4 months was go to California for 2 weeks that turned into 2 months. Okay, I guess that's what I'm doing. And the thing was, because I was listening, it was all taken care of. I had someone get my flight. I had someone get my car rental. I had a place to stay. Almost every meal was bought for me while I was there. And because I kept saying my block was, well, I can't right now. I need to have more set aside for that trip so I can cover it financially. And then the universe went, no, you don't. Here you go.
Lost it. I call that lost in the details. We
Yeah.
get so lost in the details that we don't
Right.
actually do.
Right. And lost in the woods, in a fog of yourself. And really what's happening brain-wise is we are so over focused in the executive functioning part, the prefrontal cortex, that we're not feeling into anything. We're not allowing life to unfold. We're not surrendering to life. We're not in community with life. We're not co-creating with life. We're trying to be the leader of it and own it and conquer it and run it and direct it. And there is a time and a place for that. But if you're only in that mode, you're gonna run into problems because it ain't all up to you or me or Craig. It's not up to any one of us. It's interesting because I have a slightly different perspective on what you said with, do I respect myself? So for anyone that's listening, that may resonate for you. For me, that question would trigger a whole host of self-judgments.
Mm,
Why don't I respect myself? Oh, you're not respecting yourself. You're not doing it enough. You're not doing good enough. You're being shitty. You're being this. It would start that whole trail for me. And then I would have to
yeah.
consciously deal with each one and it would take me a while. So for me, I would ask, what am I committed to?
Right.
Because this is the thing that I'm saying I want to be committed to, but I'm not doing it. So if I really just step back and observe rather than evaluate my behavior, what am I doing? What am I committed to? And what I find is I am really committed to other things. A lot of times I'm committed to the person in front of me.
Mhm.
I'm committed to what's happening in my daily life. I'm committed to my
Right.
partner. I'm committed to making sure that our domestic things are done. And recently we've been mowing neighbors' lawns and taking care of my grandmother's lawn. And that all takes time. So my
Mhm.
time has been committed in those spaces versus I would love to do more podcast interviews and do a couple out a week, but I am not able at this time to dedicate the time it takes to make sure I come out with a thorough product.
Right.
So for me, the question becomes, what are you committed to? You're saying you want this. Okay, that's fine. You can want that. And the one thing getting in your way of being able to take to stand in those motions and stand in those actions that it would take to get there is not what you're committed to. So what are you committed to instead? Because we're always committed to something.
100%. I agree with that 100%, Christina. I always say that I was committed to my excuses and not my change,
I was
and
committed to comfort.
that too. And I'm still built for comfort, not for speed. I don't enjoy running. And don't get me wrong. Yes, I do fitness. It's funny. Tell my clients all the time, they're like, oh, I wish I was as motivated as you. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm the least motivated person I know. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, no, I'm many things. I'm not motivated. I'm determined. I'm stubborn. I'm dedicated. I'm
Committed.
consistent. I'm committed, but I'm not motivated. I don't wake up in the morning and piss excellence. That's not, it doesn't happen. I wake up in the morning, I'm not motivated. The last thing I want to do at 4 a.m. is go do leg day. And that's what I had today. I knew today you and I were going to have this conversation, right? And for the last week and a half, due to my schedule, it's been afternoon workouts. I made a commitment to you for us to get on and to have a intentional chat because I know that it would serve a purpose for other people. Part of my commitment to you was I needed to get up in the morning to keep the commitment to myself, which was my workout of the day. No afternoon workout because my afternoon was dedicated to you and I helping change other people's lives. So what did that mean? 4 a.m. I had leg day. Was I motivated? Heck no, I wasn't. I had some pre-workout and I got it done anyways, though.
And that's a really good point because sometimes we have competing commitments, right? Like I said, recently my partner and I have been working on my grandmother's property. She lives on a third of an acre. In the last 3 days, we have set down 120 bags of mulch. That is not necessarily my zone of happiness.
No,
But doing it and completing it and watching the finished product and getting my hands dirty and getting in the dirt and working hard and seeing how proud he was too, because he is very much in that realm. He's been in construction most of his life, was really rewarding. And it also meant that I've had to adjust some of my commitments this week around editing episodes for the podcast because there's much more I would rather have been doing. Let me retract that. Not rather. There are things I had slated to take care of, but
right.
because we decided to take on this project, things had to shift. And it was easy to go, oh, here I went down this road again. I recommitted to something else and I blew off this other commitment. And I went, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it as best as possible. And it's going to get out just like promised. And so it's like when we have these competing commitments, we have to recommit in the moment to the thing we originally committed to and find a way to work it in and make it happen.
I love that you brought that up too, Christina, because people often tell me, I hear all the same excuses I had as a coach and at a high level that I perform at with clients. I often hear my own words thrown back at me, right? Time is always the thing. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Well, first of all, stop saying you don't have time for that because you're going to make that come true. One, two, it's not time that we lack. The whole pandemic just proved that wrong. Number one, it's not time we lack, it's priorities and direction. And sometimes our priorities will shift and change. Like you just said, other commitments will have to be moved and prioritized. And you need to have a clear focus and direction on what you need to accomplish in order to continue to complete the actions. And sometimes that means the podcast waits till the end of the week because
Well, I mean, the action is a little messy, but you're still getting something done. So being willing to have a non-negotiable within a commitment that you have, and then have other parts that you can be flexible with.
back to how you do anything is how you do everything, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and that's why I love that that's become a part of you, because that's something that's a part of me too. And I learned that how I used to do anything was how I was doing everything. And when that changed, that's when everything else changed, and especially like when I'm working with clients and they tell me, it's not the end of the world to miss one thing, to miss one healthy meal, to miss one workout. I always tell people, don't miss twice. And this is not fitness. This is not nutrition. This is don't miss twice. So if you miss a deadline once, not the end of the world. Don't miss twice. Because here's the thing, if you build a healthy habit, whether it's nailing your deadlines, nailing your commitments, nailing your nutrition, nailing your workouts, nailing your job, whatever it is, when you do it twice, it becomes a habit. Once you miss twice, that's your new habit. You will be more likely to talk yourself out of completing the healthy habits, whether it's deadlines, nutrition, fitness, because the new habit is missing.
Because our
And
commitments lead to our habits.
yes,
What we're
100%.
committed to shows up in what we do every day. And when you really can break it down, it starts with that awareness. I always come back to that because when we can back up and go, how am I being? Who am I being? What am I doing? How am I showing
Mhm.
up? You can identify where your priorities are. What you say is not necessarily what you're doing. And so when
Nope.
you get really clear, and you talked earlier about being in denial, being really committed to your excuses, that was a habit for you. Having
Mhm.
excuses allowed you to not be held to a higher standard. And when you hold yourself to a higher standard and you expand into a new way of being, whoop, the bar is raised and the habits are higher commitment, and you've got yourself on the line. You are now playing in the court of your life
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
And
And
you
one of the
start
things,
surrounding yourself with people that will hold you accountable for that.
absolutely, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Right.
Right.
So, and I know that it's a say, like, you are the sum of the five people you spend the most time with. And this day and age, it could be virtual people. If we just focused a little bit on stopping, doing what you're talking about, and just paying attention to reframing what it is that we need to do, and planning it out, doesn't mean that your plan is always going to follow through. If you don't win the day, win the week. You don't win the week, win the month. You don't win the 1 month, win the year. I mean, at the end of the day, when you plan, you're more likely to succeed in things, right? And if you have that plan and that action, and like you said, um, words can just be words. And I want people to understand, in the day and age where we live, where social media, so many people are showing you this highlight reel of vacation and entrepreneurship and Bitcoin, all these bullcrap things. I want you to know people like you and I are who we are supposed to be and not who we post to be. We don't just post for a like or a comment. We share these raw, real stories, real emotions, real circumstances, real experiences, not for people to feel bad about what we've endured, to be super proud of us. No, I could give a crap if people are proud of me for where I am. But if my sharing of my experiences helps one person remove themselves from a relationship they shouldn't be in, a job they don't belong at, an environment they shouldn't be at, so be it. Then I am fulfilling my purpose as a person by sharing and not leaving somebody where they don't belong.
100%. 100%. And for the sake of our listeners, just so you guys know, all the places you can find Craig will be in the description of this episode. And on Instagram, you're the unfiltered coach, right?
I was the unfiltered life coach. I still go by that, but I changed my name. I changed it to the official Craig Daigle because I'm me. I'm Craig Daigle.
I'll put the links in the
Yeah.
description, but I, we've had several conversations one-on-one, and we've had many conversations in groups of people on Clubhouse.
Mm,
And it just, you've always occurred for me in that way. You've always occurred to
yeah.
me as you are the same one-on-one as you are in a group, and you are in integrity with who you are. And I can relate to that because I do the same thing. It's important to me that who you meet here on the podcast and who you meet one-on-one and who you meet in a group is the same person. I may say more in a one-on-one conversation about myself than I
Right.
would in a group, but at the end of the day, I'm the same person, and that did not used to be the case for me. It used to be that
Same,
I would
same.
yeah, I would show up professionally in one way, and I would show up personally in another way because I had all this stuff that was out of whack. And just like you mentioned how it can pop up sometimes, it still can. I think there's this, and we'll close on this, but, I think there's this idea that once you understand a certain amount or you reach a certain level of your own personal enlightenment of yourself and self-growth, personal growth, that your work is done. No, the challenges get bigger.
Harder, more intense. It takes
Yes,
it takes more effort to achieve the goal that you've already achieved
because your
once you've
goals are
achieved it.
bigger.
Absolutely.
Success is a
It's
moving target. And it's never a destination. It's always like, wow, look at where I'm at now. And you start moving through those things faster. And I know you and I have talked about that to some extent. And how it gets easier. Even if those things do pop up again, you go, okay, I've been here before.
yeah.
This is how I get through this. This is my process. And for you, a lot of that has been through fitness. And you guys can see him on Instagram. You can see his videos that he does of his workouts, and Craig's in great
Mhm.
shape. And it took a while for you to get there, but that's a commitment to yourself that you haven't lost over these last 7 years. It's just grown and deepened and expanded. And I have the utmost respect for you that you've been able to do that and to come from the weight that you have to lose that amount, but not just lose it, allow it to permeate your cells and work through everything else. And you're incredibly generous. You sent me a bag of Shakeology, and I made smoothies just a few days ago for my family, veggie smoothies with that mix and some fresh veggies and fresh raw juice. And and that's how we change the world.
100%. And that's my goal. It's my passion. Like I share with everybody the things that have helped me along the way that I know will help change other people. And it's not, we are all individual. We all have a different path. People think that it's just this straight line of success, and it's not. It's like this, like the whole way there, like these ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And
Well, and I would say it's not even quite like this. It's like this.
yes, yes. And there's
Because as long as you're paying attention and you're growing every time, which as long as you're curious and you're observing and you have a decent level of awareness, then that is going to be the case. The more curious you are, the more grateful you are, the more playful you are, the more aware you are, the more mindful you are, the more intentional you are, that's going to be steeper. But every time you go through something new, it's going to climb a new level. Even though it's gonna dip
100%.
again, it's still climbing a higher level.
Even if it's 1%, Christina,
Yeah.
even if it's 1%, it's still forward progress.
Yes.
Still forward.
So what is one final message that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
If you're able to listen to this and you know that you've survived all of your worst days up until today, just take a moment, place your hand on your chest, and you'll feel that. That's your heartbeat, and that's purpose. You still have purpose. And if you can feel that and it's there, don't give up.
Beautiful, Craig. And I'll close myself with saying, if our heart is beating and our lungs are breathing, We're alive and everything is possible. Everything. So grateful to have had you here with me, Craig. Thank you so much. And big, big love, my friend. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Christina Crooks Show. If you'd like to learn more about our guest, you can explore the show notes, and there should be information about them in there. If you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can go to my website, christinacrooks.com, and learn about different offerings we currently have, or set up a call with me personally. I hope that you take away some insights and some new inspirations, some new zest for life. And I hope, above all, you have a really great day.